See if I can make this thing make noise. I'm Dan Garrity, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm sober tonight through the grace of God and the help of the program, the Alcoholics Anonymous. And I'd like to first start out by thanking the committee for allowing me to be here. And then I would like to thank Tom Collins for putting my name before the committee for consideration. I feel a little bit like the local boy that made good. I was born and raised right here in the city of Chicago. I've spent all my life here, both drunk and sober. And this has to amount to one of the proudest times of my life. To be able to stand here before you, sober, content, and to know that I did nothing for it. What I have, you gave me. What I have is a gift. And when I came here, I didn't want it. I came here in February of 1962. And I was 29 years old. And I was without my wife, without my family. I was unemployable. I was angry. I was full of hate, and I didn't want your help. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous because someone else made a phone call on my behalf. I had no idea where that phone call was to be made. I had no idea what the outcome of that phone call might be. But as I stand here now, as I look back, I'm the recipient of a miracle. I'm the recipient of God's grace as it was given to me on a daily basis by you. And please keep in mind, I didn't want it. When I came here, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll tell you how it all came about. I got out of the Summerdale lockup one morning, and I'd been there before, so it wasn't a real big deal. And I went to the gin mill I closed the night before, getting locked up. And I sat down on the bar stool, and I told a couple of people what was going on in my life. Well, the fellow on my right, I told him about my wife. She was a nice girl, but not terribly bright. You see, she left me again, and she doesn't really have any idea what a good deal she's losing out on. And I had a confrontation with the police the night before, and as it turns out, I told a fellow on my left about the policeman. I was really going to mop up the floor with him. And this guy said, yeah, you could have taken him. Yeah, you could have done it. So I bought both of these guys a drink. And I continued to lie a little bit more about what was going on in my life and how I was a victim, how everybody was just lousing me up something awful. And I was really a hell of a nice guy who, quite frankly, was just looking for a break that hasn't come yet. This particular morning, I went to see a priest because I was born and raised a Catholic. I hadn't been to church in a terribly long time, but just getting out of the lockup, unemployed, The wife and the kids were gone. I didn't know what else to do, so I went to talk to this priest. He thought it'd be a good idea, or no, he didn't either. As a matter of fact, we chatted a little bit, and he said, Dan, where are you going? I said, well, I don't know. I think I'll go look for work. He said, well, okay, but what are you going to do about your problem? I said, I'm not going to do anything at all because I don't have a problem, okay? I said, you've been listening to my wife. Obviously, you know, I do get drunk, but what the hell? Anybody that drinks gets drunk. It's not a big deal. So I turned to go again and leave him in his office, and he said, Dan, what are you going to do about your problem? And I have no idea why I answered him in the manner in which I did, but I turned to this guy and I said, well, maybe I'll call AA. I never read of it before. I knew of nobody in AA, and yet I said, maybe I'll call AA. He said, that's a good idea. I said, okay, I'll call him when I get home. He said, no, we'll call him now. And he dialed the number. And I got on the telephone, and I didn't want to talk to the lady downtown. She didn't want to talk to the priest, so I had to get on the telephone. And I gave him my name and my address, and I hung up. And I told him what the lady told me, and that was that two fellas would be out to see me that night. And he was happy that they were coming, and I was happy to get out of his office. So I left. I really didn't expect anybody to show up that night. Quite frankly, I thought everybody dealt about the same way I did. If there was something in it for me, I'd make you any kind of a damn promise you wanted. So I figured they think there's something in it for them, so they promised me these guys would be out. But there's nothing in it for them, so they ain't going to show. Don't worry about it. But I went home, and lo and behold, about 7 o'clock, these fellas showed up. And the one fella said to the other, he said, listen, did you bring the beginner's kit? And the fella said, no. He said, well, do you have a 12-step card in your pocket? And the other guy said, no. First guy said, well, the hell with it, we'll get through this. And they sat in my living room, and they talked to me about coffee, and they talked to me about people, and they said, would you like to go to a meeting? And I said, yes. And the only reason I said yes is I was sitting now for 2 days with the great I Am, and I don't like me that well. So I went to this meeting. I sat between these two fellas. The lady who was the secretary of the group, the fellow on my right, his name was Don and mine is Dan. In taking the comments around the table, she confused the two names and introduced me as the new group secretary. And I got up and walked out. One of these two fellas came out after me. He said, where are you going? I said, I have no idea where I'm going, but I'm not staying here. I said, you guys came out to sell me something. The other guy forgot the kit and the card. We came down here, and she said, I'm taking over. This fella said, Dan, I can't tell you if you belong here or you don't. I can't tell you if you're an alcoholic or you're not. He said, but I'll tell you what I would do if I were you. He said, I would give it 30 days. And if at the end of 30 days something good hasn't happened, you go drink. Because if you don't care, we don't care. I'm not sure why that made sense, but it did. And from that night till this day, I have not found it necessary to take a drink. And by no means does that say that, it's been all peaches and cream from that night till this day, because it has not been. I have been on the greatest adventure of my life on a daily basis. And it hasn't changed a bit. I have not gone a week in that time in which I haven't made 2 or 3 meetings a week. Now that's not a real big deal, except if you try and put it in its proper perspective. 2 or 3 nights a week, I put an hour into AA, and it in turn has given me an opportunity to continue to learn how to live without getting in all kinds of trouble with the police, with my wife, with my lawyers, with kids. I lead a trouble-free life. And it's not because I'm the sharpest knife in the drawer. It's because I don't drink, and it's because I've learned to do what you have taught me to do. I have learned every major lesson of my life since coming to Alcoholics Anonymous. And I know Alcoholics Anonymous teaches nothing, absolutely nothing that's new. I think in my particular life, as I can look back upon it, people have been trying to direct me and show me the way ever since I've been able to talk. And for whatever reason, I chose not to listen. I'm not sure why that is, but I do know that it is. I believed at some level I was going to do this thing all by myself. I don't need your help, I don't want your help, and I will not ask for your help. I'll do it. What I need is just enough time. What that got me was drunk. What that got me was in trouble. What that got me was on my knees at a meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous saying, I can't do it by myself. I can't do it alone. And the hardest thing of all for me to learn was, I need your help. I want your help. And I will ask for your help. You know, as I grew up, I had a nasty tongue. It's not the best today, but this is an AA meeting, and I do the best I can not to use any of the 4-letter words, because I don't think they belong here. But as I grew up, I learned to use them all, and I used them in every possible context of the world. Somebody would say to me, Dan, you know, you'd be a hell of a guy if only you didn't swear. Then they'd walk off. As I grew, then somebody would say, Dan, you'd be a hell of a guy if only you didn't steal. And they too would walk off. I came to Alcoholics Anonymous, and they said to me, Dan, you'd be a lot better off if you didn't drink. And then they did something terribly, terribly unique. They said to me, stick with us, and we will show you how not to. And you did. You have shown me how not to drink a day at a time, through good things and through bad things. You have taught me of a God of my understanding. A God for me which lives within all of us. Earlier, the secretary spoke about Tom Collins. I mentioned his name. The God of my understanding allows me to believe that he's here tonight too. That Alcoholics Anonymous is being looked over by people like him. And a couple other names I could mention, but I will not, because this isn't a terribly solemn moment, but it is a very real moment wherein I realize that God is in this room, Tom Collins is in this room, and those of us who wish to look for him will find him within ourselves. AA is an inside job. God is an inside job. And for me, in my life, Alcoholics Anonymous and God are one and the same. There is no way that just ordinary people could have done for me what you have done for me without the intercession of a God of my understanding. There is no way that I could have done some of the things that I have done without the God of my understanding from Alcoholics Anonymous. One of which was, after being sober 10 or 12 years, my first wife and I decided that it was not working out very well and we should each go our own separate ways. And we did. And I sat the kids down and I told them what was going on. And I let them know that I would not be far away. And I was not. My oldest son worked in a gas station in the neighborhood. And I went to see him one night because I wanted to talk to him about something and I don't know what. But he said to me, "Get away from me, you SOB. I don't ever want to see you again." I got in my car. I started to drive to a meeting. I pulled the car over because I was crying. And I said to God, "You have got to do your part. I'm not drinking. I'm trying to do what these steps want me to do. But you have got to do your part." I drove on to the meeting. I felt a whole lot better. And today that son and I talk on a very regular basis. And without hesitation, he says, "Dad, I love you." And if you think I could have done that without your help and without God through you, it'd never work. Because the great I am that night wanted to punch his lights out and make him realize just who I was. But fortunately, because of AA, I know who I am. I'm not the worst guy in the world. I'm not the best guy in the world. But because of you, I'm far, far better than I was when I came. And I have you to thank for that. And I have no reason to believe that that will ever stop. If I continue to do what you taught me to do, talked about simplicity, don't drink, go to meetings, and ask for help. It works for me. Thanks.